Hi, it's Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. Before I begin my video, I want to apologize for not doing a video sooner, but I haven't been feeling well, and unfortunately that delayed me getting one made. I apologize for that. I got a lovely box of things from my friend Jane, and I wanted to send her a thank you note, so this video is going to be making that card with embossing powders and clear embossing powder on white paper so you can't see it, then watercoloring over it. It's really an interesting technique, and I hope you'll stay tuned for it. My plan is to use a 5.5 inch tall by 4 1/4 inch wide card base, and it's just 110 pound Recollections cardstock. And I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to put my magnet on the very edge of it because this is a really big image, and I want to make sure that I can get it on there so it stays positioned in the middle. And if you have one of these red rubber images that you don't have that foam on the back, I never put that foam on the back of mine. I truly believe it works much better if I just use Aleene's Tack It Over and Over on the back, or a little bit of tape runner, and in this case I'm going to put a little tape runner on this one. Okay, so I put some tape runner on the back of it. Can you see that? And then the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little pouch and go over my background so that we're sure that it's got some cornstarch on it, and then I'm going to lay it so that it says this, so the saying is not upside down, because you know I have a tendency to do these things. So I'm going to try and center that. As close as I can to the middle, and hopefully it's straight. So I'm going to put it on the back like that, make sure my tape is stuck to it, and then I want to look at it and make sure that the letters or the line is lined up. We're going to use Versamark ink, and my stamp, it came from Purple Onion Designs, and they have several images of this type that are big like this. They have one for Halloween, they have one for birthday, and I like this one for thank you because it has a bunch of different languages on it, and I love that idea. I use my elbow a lot of times when I have a big image in the MISTI, because the door of the MISTI is really, really thick, and that's great for people who can actually press on it that hard, but I can't. So that's my advice to you. If you can't press on it hard enough, do what I do and just take the take your elbow and go at it. I'm going to use clear embossing. So I'm going to use some super old embossing powder. Hopefully it'll be okay for this technique because it is super old. I was going to use my cup on it, but now I'm thinking, why not just pour it on here, right? So our first color we want to do is red. So in my book here, I have crimson. I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm just going to dab it a little bit on my crimson. You don't need a lot of it, and I'm just going to go across this bottom. Lindsay the Frugal Crafter has a tip, and that is if you want to take off any of your tapes and not have it tear your paper, that if you do it while they're hot from the heat tool, that they'll come off easier. So that's a tip I'm sharing that I learned from her, and I think it's a good tip. I think I'm going to take my red to the bottom because the purple is all the way to the top, so I might as well take the red all the way to the bottom. Don't you agree? You want to vote on that? No, we're not going to vote. We're just going to do it. We're just going for it. I just want to make sure that doesn't look like it's missing something there across there. Now if you want to, you can always wipe off the white of the embossing powder to make sure that it still looks nice and white, because it's resisting all the color, and so since it resists the color, the white paper underneath will show through completely. It's just a matter of making sure it's dry enough to ensure that you don't ruin the image below. So I'm just going to very gently wipe my white background and move the towel to make sure I don't move the color into another color. So that's kind of our image. I wasn't sure. I think it'd be kind of cool if I cut that out instead of having it on a white background, if I cut it out and put it on a different colored background. I think I'm going to do that and maybe have a white layer around it. So let's do that. I'll show you quickly, hopefully quickly, how to do it so that you can create a border around your image and also cut out the whole thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it so that it's the purple image at the top is nice and straight. My paper's nice and straight in there. And you hold down that plastic piece to ensure that you have a nice clean cut. And then you're going to line up the edge of the white with their outside. You can see that there's a little bit of border around the whole image. And then we'll see if there's any room for the top and the bottom on that. There isn't, but maybe I should do a 5x7 card. So when we do that, the way we're going to figure that out is we're going to take a piece of white cardstock and we're going to put it in our trimmer, and we're going to hold our card that we're going to cut. We're going to hold that in there, and let's say we want, let's say, this much of a border. To do that, you're kind of going to eyeball it at this point and decide if that needs to go in a little bit more. Then you're going to move your paper a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to pull that out and we're going to cut that, and hopefully it's straight. Then you're going to pull that piece out and you're going to hold this up to it, and we're going to see if we like that. That's a pretty good border. So then you're going to put it in this way. Same thing, you're going to put it near the bottom the way you want it, and then you're going to push it back so that you can see how much of a border you had around the top, and that's how you create a border around your card background. See that? So we're going to take this and we're going to put it on this background. I think that looks pretty good. Somehow I think this edge is not straight, so I'm going to straighten that edge with my paper trimmer. I don't know if you think that's not straight, but I don't think that's straight. It's just my own crazy imagination, but it just doesn't look straight to me. And it's not, now that I look at it. Here I'm teaching you how to make straight cuts, and I didn't make a straight cut. That's better. Probably not perfect, but it's not bad. I took my center and I put it on a piece of turquoise paper, and I put all these paper clips, no, not paper clips, clothespins around my image so that I could really make sure that it stayed well adhered. And then I'm going to take this Dylusions small star stencil, and I'm going to use the same rainbow order of colors, starting with candy apple red at the bottom. And when I do that with this, I have a piece of paper folded over on my right side because my card sticks out the right side of this, and I'm going to really pounce on this to get my red ink onto the bottom of my image. The reason I'm doing that, make sure I have the right brush. the reason I'm doing that is I can use my ink that's on the stencil to help me color in my stars, and then I don't have to keep going back and forth with my paintbrush onto my ink pad. I just can do this, and it makes sure that the inking is nice and clean and that there's a lot of it. Whereas if you go to your brush, like if I would do this, I won't get as much. I'll show you on the right side here. You don't get as much. Can you see that? I don't get as much ink. Whereas if I take my stamp or my ink pad and I just kind of dab on there with it, and then I use it to go over it. You see how much darker that is? It's just, I think it's just a smart way of doing this so that you don't have to put as much work into it. So I'm going to hold down my stencil. It's another way to keep my hands cleaner than usual too, is making sure that I hold on to the right edge where so I don't have my hands in the ink. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to just, ooh, I got a little on the inside. That's not a problem because I can always put a stamp in the inside, or put a little something. I could use one of my stamps. I can get some of my star stamps from Rubber Stamp Tapestry, the pig stamp people, which I'll use for the envelope. So our plan here is to cover this up with that, and if we don't like a section, like this purple section is a little bit wonky, we could do something with that. We could cut off this edge and make it a little bit smaller, and that would get rid of the image on the back. I'll show you that. See this little piece of red right there? If you don't want it, all you need to do is you put your card in your paper trimmer and we cut it off so that it's completely gone. Voila! It doesn't matter that this side of our card doesn't have the stamping on it all the way over. You can always put it like that and you will never see the difference. Now, if you want to, you could save your stripes, or your, stripes. You could save your stars for on your envelope if you wanted to. I think I'll just put that aside and decide that later. But the next step we're going to take is we're going to take some tear tape and put on the back of our turquoise paper. And I'm using some pretty thick tear tape because you've got a pretty substantial image to lay down. There are, I think, 3 or 4 layers of this. You just want to make sure when you do something as thick as this that you have it really well adhered, and tear tape does a nice job of that. Let me take the tape back off and I'll be right back. So here's my background. I'm going to make sure I get that centered. I've got a little spot of my tape sticking over the front. Got to get that off. Okay. I'm going to put it a little bit over that side, and then we're going to push it down. And then on the inside, I stamped kindness is the sweetest gift of all, and some of my inks bled through over here. Now I could stamp that with something else, and I might do that. I have my Made For You by Sandy Parker stamp. Got that. And then I'm going to, I do have a little peg stamp that is called Stars Open 3, which means they are 3 little stars. Stamp these in color order around the outside of the card. And okay, around the inside of the card I meant. So we're going to go with orange first. And of course you want to wipe each color off as you go. I've got my bib and I'm going to put some of my stamp cleaner on it that I make. Look how inky my hands are. Inky McInkerson, that's me. Okay, so that's nice and clean, and then I can dry it off another one. And then we're going to go to the red. Again, clean it off. And the blue. And then we can do the back of the card if we wanted to, but I'm just going to do our envelope. And on our envelope, I'm going to go across it. Oops, I didn't dry that very good. Orange. You really didn't have to do anything between the orange and the red, but I'm doing it anyway. My blue. And my green. And then my purple. And then down here on the bottom, I'm going to do purple and blue and orange, just so we have kind of a mixture of the colors. So here's our card and our envelope. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you'll give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please tell one of your friends about me on social media because you know I love that. And thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.